Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
A Pointy Way to Go. Kendra O'Connor, retired detective, hated the cold cases that weighed on her mind every single day. She loved her time as a cop in London working for the Met Police. Her job was amazing, wonderful, and she got to see things that normal people could only dream of. It gave Kendra such an amazing rush of excitement, happiness and pride to be able to solve cases and help families find closure. That was why she was a cop once. But there were times when she hated her old job. As Kendra tapped her feet on the cold floor of her favorite cafe, she had to force herself to calm down and not let the case bother her too much. So Kendra took a few deep breaths, and the wonderful smells of chocolate, marshmallows, and warming cinnamon made Kendra smile as she wrapped her aging hands around her lovely mug of silky hot chocolate. She had wanted coffee, but to her utter horror, she wasn't allowed coffee for the next week until her doctor got back to her. That was hell on earth for Kendra, but she had to stay alive for as long as she could to help the poor unfortunate victims that her task force helped. Ever since Kendra had joined the Cold Case Task Force 2 months ago after months of retirement, and she had never regretted her decision. The task force gave her a purpose and another chance to find justice and closure for the poor families of victims. And now the task force gave her a chance to get rid of some of her own cold cases before she died. It was clearly a morbid thought, but Kendra couldn't imagine anything worse than dying and leaving this amazing world with so many unsolved cases. All because of her failures. In all honesty, Kendra knew there weren't that many, but to her each cold case felt like a personal failure and a black mark against her in this life. She had to find peace for those victims. For a change, Kendra's favorite cafe was oddly quiet for the time of day. It might have been early morning on a Wednesday, but there were almost always a group of mums and dads in the corner after doing the school run, and then another group of elderly bingo ladies in a corner grabbing a drink before they went to bingo. But today, there was only the whooshing, banging and humming of coffee machines, and even the low muttering of elderly men talking about the good days when they were young, and how the world had got to pot because of liberal new ideas. Kendra just had to smile at that. "Hi, hun," 70-something retired officer Patricia Nelson said as she leaned over the table and hugged Kendra. But there was something different about Patricia today. Normally the 70-something older lady with long gray hair wore a blouse of some kind and some other piece of comfortable clothing, but she didn't today. Then Kendra realized Patricia had dyed her hair white blonde. "Curious hair?" Kendra asked. Patricia laughed. "Funny story, hun. Great-grandkids came round last night. I fell asleep and they dyed my hair." Kendra gasped and laughed. "It suits you." "Thanks." Out of the corner of her eye, Kendra saw an elderly man's hand gently place down 2 cups of coffee, and Kendra was instantly jealous. But she nodded her hello to retired Detective Jeff Long, who was also the head of the Cold Case Task Force. "Hi Kendra," Jeff said. "Pat, here's your coffee." "Thank you," Patricia said. "You not got coffee, hun?" Kendra rolled her eyes. "Doctor's orders." Not impressed. "Can we please talk about the case?" Patricia and Jeff both smiled and nodded. Then Patricia took a massive sip of her coffee and smiled as she did it. "Bastard," Kendra said jokingly. "So why we here?" Jeff asked. Kendra took out a thick police file and laid it out on the table for them to read. Even after 20 years, Kendra didn't need to reread it to remember what happened. The entire case was twisted enough. The murder victim was a wonderful 45-year-old man, a school teacher at a local school. He was always described as a sweet man who always went the extra mile to help his students, something rare these days. Kendra had liked the victim as soon as she spoke to his daughters, who were also training to be teachers, and just wished they were as good as their dad. The victim was found in an abandoned warehouse, with needles covering each and every part of his body. When Kendra first arrived, she didn't know the skin color of the victim, and apparently when the medical examiner took the needles out, the eyeballs popped out too. Even now, Kendra couldn't believe how the hell someone would have the patience, let alone find pleasure in sticking so many needles into a person. "Where you lead?" Jeff asked. Kendra slowly nodded. That was what was making the entire case even worse for her. As lead detective, it was her job to make sure the victim got justice, and she had clearly failed. She had to make this right. "Any suspects?" "What was the man doing there?" Jeff asked. "The man wasn't killed in the warehouse. He was killed in his office at the school, and moved to the warehouse. Presumably so the killer could enjoy their needlework in peace," Kendra said. Patricia started to flick through the files, and grabbed the photos of the victim's office. Then she mummed a few times. "What is it?" Kendra asked, a bit more desperately than she intended. "What was your theory of the office murder?" Kendra closed her eyes. The office was open and door was intact, but the victim never kept it locked. "I think the killer walked into the office. The victim got up to talk to them, then there was a struggle." When Kendra opened her eyes again, she watched Patricia and Jeff pointing to different parts of the photos. Kendra hated finding the office in such a mess. There were school reports, papers, and even computers smashed. But one thing that had always bugged her was how the computers and everything seemed to be smashed in only one direction. For example, if the killer and victim fought and did a few rounds of fighting, then someone should have been thrown around left, right, and center. The evidence should have showed that. But the office only seemed to show the victim, or killer, being thrown in one direction, and then there was no more fighting or struggling. That was weird in Kendra's opinion. And if the killer did just throw the victim to one side, then why do that in the first place? Kendra couldn't imagine it being that hard to kill the teacher where he stood. The teacher wasn't a massive man, so he couldn't be that hard to stab, attack, or something else. It was just so strange. And why the needles? Could it have been staged? Kendra bit her lip. Did I really miss something that obvious? I'm not sure, but the only evidence you have of something going on in the office was a small pool of blood behind the desk. Then you have this knocked-over pile, Jeff said. That would make sense, sadly, Kendra said, feeling her sadness grow. She hated making such silly mistakes. And the medical examiner said the victim died of blood loss caused by trauma. How much blood would you say is in the pictures? Kendra asked, wanting to make sure she wasn't completely wrong about her theory. Since during the investigation, she was convinced that the killer had injured or outright killed the victim in his office, taken him to the warehouse, and then sucked the needles in to finish him off. We agree with your theory, Jeff said. Kendra didn't know whether or not to take that as a compliment. It makes sense for the killer to finish bleeding him at the warehouse. Prickling the skin with needles would cause more than enough wounds, hun. Bleeding? Kendra asked, thinking of something. What? Jeff asked. Kendra grabbed the photo of the victim with all the thousands of needles sticking out of every part of him, and she smiled. All the needles were perfectly clean. There wasn't a single drop of blood on them. Oh, Patricia said. Then where's the blood? Jeff flicked to the lab report to see if there were any tests done on the needles themselves. There wasn't. Jeff shook his head. I doubt there's any of the evidence left in lockup, Kendra said. Right, let's just presume the killer sprayed the needle-covered body in something to get rid of the blood. I think Patricia's right about the bleeding. Patricia smiled and took another sip of her coffee. Then she started to read the full medical examiner's report. You must have had some suspects in the case. Jeff asked. There were only 3 suspects, really. The youngest daughter, aged 20, the first wife, and a former teacher at the school. The victim got the teacher fired because she was taking bribes from students to change official exam papers. Why didn't you charge any of them? Jeff asked. Kendra knew he was just trying to help her, but she felt as if she was being interrogated. She felt guilty enough for making a silly mistake and failing the victim so long ago. She didn't want to be interrogated much more. The youngest daughter was at a party on the night of the murder, a good 30 minutes on the tube away. She was only a suspect because of the undaughterly text she sent her father the same day. Jeff nodded. The first wife was always a loose end. She didn't have an alibi for the murder. She confessed to wanting the victim dead, and she even bought a ton of needles we could never find, Kendra said, wanting the ground to swallow her up. Jeff gently rubbed Kendra's hands. It's okay. I know all that is just circumstantial evidence, so you couldn't arrest her. Any idea on how she did it? Kendra shook her head. I was never convinced she did do it. I couldn't see why she would buy so many needles in plain sight. Especially considering her job. Which was? It was, oh, you'll like this one, her job was a crime scene cleaner. She knew exactly how we worked and think, and she knows how to clean up. So why buy needles knowing we could track them? Kendra said. Jeff took a sip of his coffee, and Kendra was starting to get really jealous. What was her excuse for the needles? We don't know. She never said. She lawyered up before I could interview her under caution. Hun, what about the teacher that got fired? Patricia asked. Kendra took an amazing mouthful of her silky hot chocolate with the warming spices of cinnamon and soft buttery marshmallows as she stared at Patricia. Actually, Patricia. The fired teacher got a new job a year after the case went cold, as some gardener. Gardener? Jeff laughed. She's a biology teacher, specializing in plants at university. But when I interviewed her at her home, it was covered in knitting and sewing creations. And that didn't strike you as odd? Jeff said, smiling. Kendra playfully hit his arm. It did, but she said she was at a teacher interview on the day of the murder and she didn't get back until late at night. Where's the interview, hun? Patricia said, taking out her smartphone. I don't know, London Lord's Cricket Private School. Something like that. Ha. The victim died in April 2002, right? Patricia asked. Yeah. I followed up the phone number the fired teacher gave me, and I double-checked the reference was right. The person on the phone confirmed the interview took place. Hun, the school closed in April 2002. I doubt they were conducting interviews for new staff. Oh, Kendra said, burying her face in her hands. She hated all of this. She couldn't believe she had been so stupid to trust a murder suspect was giving her the correct phone number. It was Cop 101. Kendra should have been better. And then the victim's wonderful daughters could have grown up knowing what happened to their father. And that was really killing Kendra inside. She had failed so badly that these daughters must have struggled growing up and being in adulthood. Then she felt Patricia and Jeff hug her tight. We all make mistakes and they'll have justice now, Jeff said as he walked, calling for an active detective to take over the case and arrest the fired teacher. As Kendra hugged Patricia back, it all suddenly clicked what had happened, and it was clearly in front of her the entire time. The fired teacher was clearly angry at the victim for firing her, so she watched for her moment to strike. She found him alone one evening, killed him, and then took her to the warehouse, which she drove past every day. Then she started her needlework. But something was bothering Kendra. Patricia, did I list the phone number I called in my files? Patricia broke the hug and found the number for her. Kendra took out her own smartphone and dialed the number. Hello, a very familiar voice said. Kendra knew it sounded ridiculous, but that was the voice of the first wife, so Kendra put down the phone, and now it really made sense. The murdered teacher had a death in service policy that had never been the focus of the investigation because it was never paid out. But when the wife and fired teacher must have met one day, the wife clearly took a chance. Then the plan was perfect. Kendra had no idea the two had met, so she was never going to see the connection. And all the fired teacher had to do was kill the victim, do her needlework, and simply give Kendra a phone number to ring, providing her with the perfect alibi. Risky but worth it clearly. As she told everything to Patricia and Jeff phoned for the first wife to be arrested again, Kendra felt a massive come off her shoulders because she had finally given the victim justice. Finally. Those amazing daughters no longer had to live in a world that took their father for no reason. Kendra was actually going to tell the daughters and wife, if she was still alive, what had happened. It was the least she could do after everything. As Kendra finished her amazing hot chocolate, and really looked forward to having coffee again, and said goodbye to her two friends and left. And as she walked out into the busy London road, Kendra realized her entire life had changed, and Kendra loved it. It was amazing how much more relaxed and freed she felt after solving the case. Now she had to change the life of the daughters, and give them the ultimate closure for their father. Like she should have done 20 years before.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested, and you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteleyverse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.